This is exactly the kind of Excel test that shows up in a job interview. And the problem is that a lot of people get nervous when they have to solve an Excel test for a job interview because they don't know where to start. How do I study for this? How do I actually solve something like this? So here's what I did. I put together a practical Excel test that can really help you prepare for a job interview where Excel is part of the process and you have to solve something in real time. So step by step, you and I are going to solve this Excel test together. And yes, completely free. You can download this spreadsheet too, so you can solve it yourself and follow along with the video at the same time. The first thing we have is the test objective. Assess whether the candidate can use Excel for data organization, formulas, table lookup, summary, chart creation. Suggested duration, 20 to 30 minutes. Instructions first. Organize the dataset. On the production data worksheet, convert the data range into an Excel table. So this is the first thing we need to do. So let's go here to the bottom and click over production data, and let's convert it into a table. So how can I do it? I can simply click, hold, and drag in order to select everything all the way down to the bottom, like this. Or if you prefer, you can use a shortcut key in Excel. Let's say you click within the dataset, and then you can use the shortcut key Control T, because Excel is going to show this new window here, and you can immediately create a table in Excel. I'm gonna check, yes, my table has headers, and then okay. Now we already have a table in Excel. However, if you prefer to do the other way, you could just select everything and then insert and then table. That's what's going to lead you into the same menu. Now let's go back to instructions because the first one is done. The second one is asking us to format dates and numbers correctly. And this is very important. And if we take a look here into the data set, we can see the date is not properly formatted. We can also go to, let's say, quantity and daily target. All those are numbers. However, they are not exactly formatted as numbers. But however, let me go first to the first column, that is the column A. Can you tell me what is this date right here? Of course not, because we are used to use dates like month and then the day and then the year. However, here it's not organized properly. So we can click on the column name, let's say A, click on the letter A, and then home tab, I can click in this down arrow and I can go to short date. Now we have a lot of those hashtags. However, these are just because the data within the cell are bigger than the column width. So we can increase the width column. Just click between A and B, hold and drag to the right, like this. Now we have the month, the day, and also the year. Now this is perfect. Column B is okay, C, D, E. However, column F, where we have quantity produced, I think it's also important to check if the format is correct. And as we can see, it's using general. However, I think it could be very important to format as number, like the test is asking us to do. Quantity with defect, I'm gonna do the same thing, change to number. Downtime, also number, and daily target also to number. That's it. Now we format properly all the data set. So we're done with the first step. Now we can move on to the second one. Create 4 columns. On the production date, production data worksheet, create the following columns. Good production. So this is the first column we're gonna do, good production. So let's create this column first, and then we move on to the second portion of this question. Good production. So let's move back to the sheet, and in this new column, I can write good underscore production, and then enter. I can also click, hold, and drag to the right to make this column a little bit wider, like this. Now let's go back to the instructions and see what we need to do exactly. Produced quantity minus defective quantity. So how can we do that? We can do a formula in Excel to help us to have this result, produced quantity minus defective quantity. Let me go back to production data. And to do a formula in Excel, we can simply use equals sign. And then I can click on the cell I want to use in this calculation, that is quantity produced minus, that is a sign on my keyboard, and then quantity with defect, and then enter. Once you hit enter, Excel is going to pull down all those formulas, basically copy to all the other rows you have, like this. However, let's say your Excel just give you the first cell with the formula. You can manually drag the formula down. Just click on this corner of the cell, click, hold, and drag down, because that way you can manually copy the formula to all the other rows, like this. So now we finish with the good production, and we can move on to the second portion of the second question, that is defective percentage symbol. Now let me move back to the worksheet. Defective percentage sign, enter. Let me increase the width of this column, and let's see what we need to do exactly in this column right here. Defective quantity divided by produced quantity. Okay, so very simple. And here is where a lot of people can make some mistakes, because we need to use percentage, number as percentage. Defective quantity divided by produced quantity. So we can have here again a equal sign to make sure Excel knows we are going to do a calculation. And defective is going to be quantity with defect divided by, that is the slash forward, and then quantity produced. Enter. Here we have again the result to all the rows. However, we need to change those results to a percentage format. So let me click on the letter L, and then I can go to General, click the down arrow, and then I can check percentage. Of course, I could use also this symbol right here, because it's the same thing. However, it's the same, okay? You can choose both of ways, because both are going to work. Now we have the defective. Let me go to the third part of this question, that is machine name. Retrieve it from the machine list worksheet. Okay, now we are moving on to a more advanced formulas that involve actually not a formula, but a function in Excel. However, let's first create the column name, machine name. Let me go back to production data, and into the next column, we are going to have machine name. I don't recall if we need to use a underscore. No, we don't need to use underscore. No, actually, good production also don't need to use a underscore. So I think I made a mistake here. So we're gonna change, instead of underscore, I'm gonna use space. Okay, that's it. Let me increase the last column a little bit, just to make it easier to see. Machine name. Let me go back to instructions. Retrieve it from the machine list worksheet. So if we go to machine list, we have actually a lot of machines, machine code, machine name, and category. What we can do to retrieve the machine name, maybe we can use the machine code, but let's check if it is going to work. Here, let's say I have machine 06. So I need to go to machine list, find machine 06, that is this one right here, and then return exactly the name of this machine. Okay, it's going to have, we're gonna need to have a lot of manual work to return all those rows. However, we can use here some formulas to help us. We can use many different formulas. Let's say we can use X, lookup. However, let's say you don't have an, let me show you here, equal sign, and then you can use X, lookup, it's going to work. However, XLOOKUP is only available on the newer Excel versions, and maybe you don't have the newer version of Excel. It's completely okay, because you can use a similar formula, that is VLOOKUP. However, we also have HLOOKUP. It's not the case here to use, okay? However, we also have a different formula of lookup, that is XVH, and we also have the lookup itself. And besides that, all those formulas, we also can use a different one, that is index coupled with match function. So we have many different options to use here. The one that I think I'm going to use is VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP. It's a formula that can look up for the value. In this case, it's going to be the machine code M01, okay, M01, comma. Now we move on to the second argument, that is going to be the table array, and the table array is where we are going to look for the code and also for the column we need to return. So the table array is not here in this sheet. However, it's in the next one that is in the machine list. So I can click here and I can simply select using the column names A, B. Don't need to select column C because we are not going to use column C yet. Okay, so just A and B. That's it. Now, comma. If you click within this formula bar, you can bring back this little tag and you can see the arguments. Column index number. Column index number is the column that you need to return. And in this case, I select the first and the second column A and B. The first one is number 1, the second one is number 2, and so on. What is the column that I need to return as a result? The second. So I need to type here number 2 and then comma. Range lookup, I want to use a exact match. So double click, 1, 2, and then hit enter. That's it. Now we have all the machine names throughout all the rows. And we're done with this question. Another one that we have is target met. Yes, if produced quantity is greater than or equal to the daily target, otherwise, no. So let's create first this column name and then we can see how can we do this yes or no to depend on the value. So let me go back to the production data and in the next column, I'm going to use target. Oh, I just missed the column name, target met, okay. Target space met, enter. Okay, let me increase the width of this column and that's it. How can I, based on two values that are quantity produced and also daily target, return yes or no? If this is the formula that we are going to use. If formula, okay, if, because if the quantity produced is greater than the target, it's because we met the target, so yes, otherwise no, simple as that. Or we can do it in a different way. Let's say if the quantity produced is less than the daily target, it's because the target is not met, otherwise yes. So equal sign and then if function. Let me double click to select 1, 2. The first argument is going to be the logical test, and in this case I'm going to use if the quantity produced is less than, look at the symbol I'm using, less than the daily target. It's because, comma, open quotations. It's very important to open quotations, and within quotations you type the value, type the text. And in this case, if the quantity produced is less than the daily target, it's because no. Target met, no, close quotations, comma, otherwise, open quotations, yes, close quotations, close parentheses, and then hit enter. Simple as that. So we're done with this new column. And we're done with the second question too. Now we can go to the third one, apply conditional formatting. Highlight in red the records where defect percentage is greater than 5%. So we have this column right here, and all the values, like this one, like this, and so on, we need to highlight with a red color. How can we do it? We can use conditional formatting in Excel, as the question said. So I can basically click in the whole column L to select everything, or if you prefer, you can select only the values within the table range. You can go up here, and when you see this black arrow pointing down, you can click, because now you can select everything within the column, and then you can go to the Home tab, Conditional Formatting, Highlight Cells Rules, and then let's see, greater than. Yeah, actually, this is the one that can help us. However, we have different criteria too. Less than, between, equal to, text that contains, and so on. However, here I'm going to now use greater than. Every time I have something that is greater than 5%, I want highlight with a red color, and then okay. We're done with this question. Let's move on to the next one. Highlight in green the records where the target met is yes. So let me go back. Every time I have yes, I need to highlight with a green color. So again, let me select the data within the column. Conditional formatting, highlight cells rules. However, this time, instead of using greater than, I'm going to use equal to, because every time I have a text that is equal to the word yes, I want to highlight it with a green fill, and then okay, that's it. Now we are almost done with this Excel test interview. 4. Answer 3 questions on the analysis tab. Okay, so we have here the analysis tab. Right now it's blank. However, maybe we're gonna need to put some data over there. Using a pivot table, the candidate must present an answer. First, produce quantity and defective quantity by machine, and identify the machine with the highest production. Okay, it's very simple to do with pivot table. How can we use a pivot table in Excel? Can I go straight to analysis tab? No, we need to go back to production data, because from here is where we are going to insert a pivot table. You can click anywhere within the dataset just to make sure you are within the dataset, because that way you can enable within the insert tab the pivot table option. Click here, and it's very important, and be careful because here a lot of people made a mistake. Instead of using new worksheet, we need to use existing worksheet, because we already have a tab in Excel where we need to put the pivot table. So existing worksheet, click in this up arrow, and then you can go to analysis and click anywhere within the screen. Let's say here, cell C4, down arrow, and then OK. Now I have my pivot table, and let's, for the last time, look what we need to do for this question. Produced quantity and effective quantity by machine. So we need to see those values by machine. The first thing I'm gonna do is use those pivot table fields. Basically, I need to click on the option, and those options are actually the columns of my table. And I can click in one of those options, hold and drag down into those fields that are filters, columns, rows, and values. Let's say I want to see first all the machines I have, and we can use the machine name. Click, hold, and drag into the rows. Okay, now Excel is going to list all the machines you have. And not only the machines we need to see, but the numbers, the quantity. And those numbers are going to be the produced. So I click, hold, and drag into the values. And we need also to use quantity with defect. Click, hold, and drag within the values. Now we're basically done. We have a pivot table in Excel that is summarizing the data using the machines, quantity, produced, and with defect. Now, if we go again to the instructions, we need to identify the machine with the highest production. So the machine with the highest production here is the machine, this one, plastic injection one. So let me go here above at the top and write the correct answer. The machine with the highest production is the machine plastic injection number 1. Enter. Okay, that's it. Now we can go back to the instructions and go to the question 4.2. Number of defects by operator, and identify the operator with the highest number of defects. So if we go back to analysis, I need to have a second pivot table to help me with this question. There's 2 options we can use here. I can duplicate the last pivot table, copy and paste, or I can go back to data production and from here create my blank pivot table. It doesn't matter what option you choose because both are going to work properly. However, in order to make it faster, I'm going to select everything using the columns itself to select everything, C, D, and E, select everything, and then Control C to copy everything. I can move, skip column F, and then in column G, click Control V. That's it. And instead of using the machine names, I'm gonna use the operator name. So I click in machine name, remove field, and let me take here the operator, click, hold, and drag within the rows, and we can already see the result, but I don't need to use this column right here, quantity produced, only the quantity with defect. So let me get rid of the quantity produced, just click within the option and go to remove field. Simple as that. And we also need to answer the question, what is the operator with the highest number of defect? And the highest one is, as I can see, is Nick. So the operator with the highest number of defects is the operator Nick. That's it. Let me go back to instructions and then we can move on to the last one of the 4th question. 4.3, report how many records did not meet the target. So if we go here to production data, of course, there is a lot of targets equal to no and a lot of equal to yes. So how many is equal to no? Because no is equal to not meet the target. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But imagine you do it for all the rows you have. So instead we can use, of course, pivot tables. And this time I want to do a different approach. Instead of copy and paste, I'm going to insert a pivot table. And very important, in existing worksheet, be mindful about this option. Up arrow, and then let's move on to analysis and click somewhere right here. Down arrow, and then OK. Let me bring this column I to the left a little bit, like this. And for this third pivot table, what we can do is we can count how many times we have yes and no. So to do that, I can first show those options. I can click here, target met, click, hold, and drag within the rows, like this, no and yes. And then again, using the same option, click, hold, and drag into the values, because Excel is going to count how many times we have yes and how many times we have no. And that's it, done. We answered those questions. However, we need to report how many records did not meet the target. Maybe we can type the correct answer or whatever, okay? But I really recommend you to type here the result. Instructions, number 5, create a chart based on the pivot table. Create a combo chart. So it's not a standard chart, it's a combo chart. Combo chart is in Excel is basically a combination of 2, 3, 4 or more charts into one. And in this case, I need to use columns with line to present analysis from item 4.1. So we need to create a chart to show the information about this option 4.1. Produced quantity and defective quantity by machine. And something important here is one value is going to be column, another one line. However, the question did not say which one is going to be the column and which one is going to be the line. So I can just use the option that I like the most. Let me go here to analysis, and to create a chart from a pivot table, we simply click on the pivot table itself and then insert, and then we can choose the chart. Let's start with a standard column chart, because then we can change the format. That's it. Let me click, hold, and drag to the left. Let me use those handles to click, hold, and drag to the right a little bit. And as you guys can see, we already have a chart where we can see the quantity produced and quantity with defect. However, because the values are so different, the orange one is too low to the ground and we can not actually see the variation. So this is why I think the test is asking us to use a combo chart, line with columns. And to do that, we can simply right-click into the chart and then change chart type, and we can go all the way to the last option, combo. And here I can use one chart or one value as column and another one as line. However, just using column and line doesn't mean you're gonna be able to see the data properly, as you can see here in this chart. To make sure you can see properly the values, you can mark here secondary axis. So click here in this option, secondary axis, and then OK. We have now a axis in the left and another one into the right. The one in the right is representing the line, and the one in the left is represented the columns. How do I know that? Because if we put the cursor within any, if we hover the cursor within a column, let's say, it's showing us 4,250. So this is the value exactly where the axis is. And that's it, we're done. Now we have a combo chart. We can properly see the values using two different data within the same chart, line and column, and we're done with the test. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or any suggestions to the next videos, let me know, comment down below, and I see you in the next one.